Yeah, I find that I definitely, I guess, in just relating to people, I would say that it, like, empathy and compassion towards others has been something I've been actively working on. And I've noticed in doing so, it's been, again, that stage one of just being compassionate with myself. Like, if I have shortcomings, but also
Absolutely.
facing some of the things in my past, facing some like things that I've been working through. That process is super uncomfortable for me at times. Or like, even, I don't know, this weekend I was reading someone's post on Facebook and I immediately got triggered. And I was like, "Duh!" And then I was like, why am I upset? And then I had to like take time to figure it out. But that was an uncomfortable process. Like, could you, do you have in that initial process where you're working kind of with your raw emotions, uh what comfort, discomfort do you feel in facing those things, if any? And then how do you kind of work through that?
Yeah. I think a lot of my work is gazing into the past. Personally, I have a lot of experiences that even if I write about them 100 times, I don't feel like I've digested it quite fully, or still know entirely what it means to me or how it's affected who I am. And so I do think that there is discomfort when you approach anything, especially from the past. I think all of us hopefully can say that we're better people today than maybe we were a few years ago or 10 years ago or when we were teenagers, or, and not to say we were bad people, but hopefully on our life's journey, that's something that, you hope that you're growing through or growing into a better person. And looking back at personally in my own work at who I was a long time ago maybe is certainly uncomfortable. There's, I think, things we've all done that we're not proud of, or even if we don't regret them or understand that it made us who we were, there are things that we go through that just affect us for the rest of our lives. It's like a room that we keep in our memory house that is just something that the door never closes on. So when I'm looking at my own work and kind of visiting those memories, sometimes I'll set myself a timer and I'll dwell in that memory or in that world or in that old self, for whatever the purpose is, whether it's telling a story or even looking back at that from the lens of who I am now, can change how I look at that experience or that sort of life event. And yeah, I'll set myself a timer and basically step away or turn on Harry Potter or some happy music. There's, I think, benefit to dwelling in something and honoring those emotions, but there is a certain point where I don't think it's healthy or productive anymore. And when I notice I'm hitting that point, I try to step away from the work. And most of the time I find that it benefits when I come back to it later, when I let it rest for a while and come back to it fresh, not just emotionally, but with fresh eyes,
I don't know, if I let myself just stew in whatever emotion I'm feeling, whether it be, most of the time it's like I'm sad about something and I play like a song that makes me feel sadder, and then I just play it
Yeah,
over and
lean
over,
into
and then
it.
yeah. And so at a certain point I'm like, I'm just beating myself up, like I'm just like, I am worse off than when I started.
Mm.
I just need I need to pivot and do something different. Yeah, it's interesting.
And I think, I don't know if I noticed this before, but even in saying that I will watch a happy movie or listen to happy music after I dwell in that space or after I lean into that feeling of sadness or grief, I'm still turning toward art to get me out of those feelings too. I'm still turning toward music or sometimes poetry or the novel I'm reading, the junky YA magic fantasy, whatever it is that you're turning to. I think that art can process a lot of those, both good and bad facets of feeling your feelings.
Feeling the feels.
We got a lot
Yeah.
of feels.
So many feelings.
What I think is
Yeah.
so cool and relatable too, now that we are getting a little bit older and a little bit wiser, I hope. But what you said about looking back at those memories with a different lens, because I find with a lot of my sad memories, I in the moment when I was my younger self was mad and just had all of these like negative emotions to it. But now that I've gone through so many more adventures and learned more about myself, I can come at it with a little bit more kindness and be like an understanding, I guess, too. So
I love that. And I think that relates to what John was saying about sort of, if we're seeking compassion for others in the outside world, finding that compassion for ourselves or that kindness is hard and underrated and not talked about enough. But yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Well, we have these big expectations for ourselves and for the world. And when you get disappointed in yourself and in what's happening around you, it's so easy to just, beat yourself down. So
It is. Yeah, are we ready for a poem? I think that's, so I picked two poems to share if we had time. And the one that I want to read first, Monica, I think you just really hit the nail on the head, where it's like, to me, this poem is about having that kindness, having that compassion for yourself, and remembering that when we're moving through the world, and that everyone's just doing their best. We all have huge expectations for ourselves, for each other, for the world right now, even when it seems impossible to expect anything. You might know this poem. This is called Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Love it.
we all got the feels.
I think I love that poem for a lot of reasons, but I think, when you hear the title Wild Geese, you immediately have a clue that there's going to be some nature in there. There's going to be some birds honking. That's great. But when she starts off with that first line, you do not have to be good. It just gives you that permission, that we're all trying to do our best. And even when we're not being good to ourselves, we should be. You don't have to be good, but you can be, and you can try to be good.
I was gonna say that again, that first line, just for me personally, I derive so much of my value from achievement and from doing positive things in the world.
Yeah.
That just, again, that permission to just not be this like Superman, right? Like, not to be this, superhero to everyone all the time. Just takes some of the weight off,
Having someone tell you that that's okay seems rare. I mean,
yeah. No, so I always think about, and I heard it, and we all heard it growing up, like the golden rule, right? Love others as you would do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Love others as you would love yourself. I never thought of it until recently. It was like, well, wait, what if I don't love myself? How am I treating others? What if I'm doing things to myself by like being overly critical or expecting so many unrealistic things out of myself? of course I'm going to, it feels like the interpretation for me now is you end up loving others as you do love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, then you're probably not loving others, and you're being, like you're not being as positive as you could be. And yeah, just again, that first line just kind of takes the edge off a little bit. It's just like, oh, well, you know what? Shoot, like I can love myself, no matter what I do.
Yeah. I think it reminds us that we want to be good. I think most of us do strive for that. And like we've been talking about, I think we do, as we grow and grow older, want to improve ourselves in some way, whether it's body, mind, understanding our emotions, understanding the past, whatever it is. I think it's a reminder that, we want to be good. But we're not always, and that's okay. It's okay to be okay or not okay.
And I just want to say, I mean, that is a beautiful poem, and I have crossed it in the past, but just hearing you read it, Al, like, oh my gosh, it is beautiful. And so the presentation of it can take it to a completely different level compared to, how I read it just, sitting at my computer one day versus having someone read it. It just really changes the experience.
Yeah, and I think John is gonna post some links later, but I do have a recording of Mary Oliver reading this poem that I picked to share, and it has the text of the poem along with it on YouTube. And she was just a fascinating poet and a fascinating reader, and a poet of such compassion that I think, hearing anyone read poetry aloud, especially the poet themselves, is a valuable practice. And if we're talking about communication in poetry, or, reading a poem alone or on the page in silence is still a wonderful, meaningful practice to engage in. But I think what you're saying, Mon, is definitely, if there is another layer to the experience to be added, it's engaging with listening to the poet read, or hearing it, or watching them. And I mean, it's no secret, poetry was an oral practice in history. It was memorized and shared sort of as songs and histories and praises. And I think when we listen to poetry be read or recited, it recalls those feelings. It definitely makes it feel more of a public practice that, when we think about great speeches or speakers, I think they probably practiced reading and reciting poetry also.
Mm-hmm. And, that brings into one of the things that I was hoping to garner from this conversation. One of the goals with this broadcast, it's not quite a podcast yet, but is, to challenge me to be a little bit more articulate and how I communicate things. And so do you have any wisdom or any exercises that we can do to help ourselves with that?
I think that everyone's a little bit different in what might engage them in a practice like that. But some of the things that I love to recommend to students or anyone who doesn't call themselves a writer but is interested in the practice, whether it's to become more articulate, or to look at poetry in a different way, or just to try something they've never tried with words and language. There are little pocket-sized notebooks that are about this big. I carry one of those around with me. And when I used to leave the house, it was in my work bag or my purse or whatever, and it fit everywhere. But now I don't carry anything with me, so it's just, I don't go anywhere. So I just have little sticky notes around the house, or different little scraps of paper. But I think writing down different observations and images throughout the day is a great practice. Even if it never yields anything that you might share with someone, you're engaging in being a better witness. You are engaging with your world and holding things up to the light in a different way, by cataloging them. You're becoming an archivist in a way. And so that can be anything throughout your day, whether it's going out at the end of the night, and looking at what phase the moon is in, or you know, what trees are sprouting around you that day, or looking out your window. You know, right now I think hopefully at least we all have a window to look out of, but you know, what weeds are sprouting on your lawn, just anything to engage you in. And I think being more observant.
For sure. Be a listener.
Yeah, listening not just to those around you, and you know, who you're listening to on the radio, or I sound old, who you're streaming on Spotify. You know, what we're all engaging in things hopefully that you know, are productive, but are also productive in making us feel good right now. And whether that's watching Scrubs for the 40th time, or finishing all 7 collections of Great British Baking Show in a month. You know, I think even those experiences are valuable in some way and can be generative for some kind of, you know, record making. What you're turning to for comfort even is special and worth noting. I think there's an Ada Limon poem that ends with something along the lines of, she just makes a big deal out of everything. And I think, you know, poets have this reputation of over romanticizing things or making comparisons and leaps that just make other people roll their eyes, you know. But I think that's what they're engaging in, is just holding every small thing up to the light and saying, this is part of my world too, and why not notice it? And yeah.
Well, I think there's, I mean, I've personally done it, and then I've read, there is a lot of benefit that can be drawn just from journaling. You know, some people say just like, you know, like you said, just write down a sentence or just write down something that you've observed. And you mentioned meditating a little bit ago. Like that to me has always been, that's been the game changer, because I've just been able to just observe and listen to what I've got going on and hold it up to the light and not judge it. Like no matter, I mean, there are times I'm thinking about, I'm meditating, I'm like, God, my stomach hurts. Or like, or, you know, like, man, I don't know, shoot, I left the burner on, something like that, you know, like, but it's like, yes, you know, I could be like, God, you're so absent-minded, and why are you thinking about your stomach? Or man, you're thinking about Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets or something, right? But that's just, you know, again, holding things up to the light, being an observer, and just that being it, you know, and being okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think journaling is a great practice, and I think there's lots of different styles of journaling. I think not everyone is someone who can just pick up their same notebook at the end of the day and sort of jot down what happened. You know, the pocket notebook is another way, and they're like this thin. You know, they're not low stakes writing in any way, whether it's journaling, image writing, note taking, even if you're just reading for pleasure or watching a movie and keeping a notebook next to you, and jotting down ideas or phrases that strike you, can be a good practice too.
Yeah.
And I think even though in the moment we might feel that kind of journaling practice or note-taking or low stakes writing isn't formal, or, you know, you might not show it to anyone ever, I think that ability to look back at not only who you were, but who you are now, in comparison, and how you're feeling differently or the same even, is such a cool practice. I could nerd out on that forever. I've been keeping daily planners since middle school. Thanks, Pineview. And, I still keep them, even though I have a digital calendar as well now for work and things. I still keep a handwritten planner, and it's not just for appointments and dates and birthdays and things. I jot down life events. I'll write down, what shows we're going to. I miss music. You know, who we're getting together with that day. Not anymore, again, but and even those kinds of things are amazing to look back at, and just kind of, shower yourself in memories can be, I think, a wonderful practice, even if sometimes they were painful at the time.
I wanted to ask you though, I mentioned in introducing you that as long as I've known you, you've been writing. As long as you've been writing, you're like, truly, to me, anytime I've read any of your work in middle school, high school, like I'm super engaged in it. And even now, yesterday I was brushing up on some of the things I definitely haven't read, or haven't read in some time, and I was like, God, just as engaging as I remember it. But if you could go back to any point, any writing L or any L as a human, and give, words of advice, words of caution, just encouragement, what would that look like?
Oh man. I think I would just tell her, keep doing what you're doing. This is what you're supposed to be doing, and doesn't matter how many people tell you you won't make any money ever. It still matters, and it's okay to not want anything out of it except what it brings you, which is life and energy and, I don't know, a catalog of experience that hopefully one day I can continue to look back at and be proud of, that, even in moments of fear or uncertainty, that I was still trying to make sense of the world this way, and that's okay. Nothing brilliant, but
I'd say that's pretty brilliant.
Great. Well, this has been super fun. I think there are a couple of small resources that, if you're not already interested in poetry, these resources might be sort of things to touch your toes into, light doses that you can engage with, that come straight to your inbox. One of them is poets.org has a poem a day newsletter. It's just a printed email poem to your inbox that oftentimes is accompanied by the poet reading it as well. Another one is The Slowdown, which is hosted by former US Poet Laureate Tracy K. She presents a different poem every weekday, and they're less than 5 minutes long. It's a podcast. So also a great, just short spurt of something. And then if you're ever interested in seeing some readings, right now, actually, because of COVID-19, there was a poet who decided we needed some virtual opportunities to continue engaging with readings and stuff. So one series that I've been attending almost weekly is the Wild and Precious Life poetry series. You can find them online, and they have an Instagram page, Wild and Precious Life series. And yeah, you can find my work at ariellehebert.com, which I think John's going to include too. But thanks for letting me drip some poetry onto you guys. This was super fun.
Hi, everybody. You've reached the end of our latest episode of Come On with Mon and John. If you enjoyed what you watched and you are just learning so much, or you're learning a moderate amount of things and you're just mildly entertained, please like and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. If you want to leave a comment and tell us things that you enjoyed about it, we'd love that too. I know that our guests that have come on, see what I did there? The guests that have come on really enjoy that kind of feedback too. So please support our guests. Please support the channel. And guys, just hope you have a really, really great rest of your day. And keep on coming on with Mon and John.